All right, so it's been a few weeks since I made a video. I had some health complications. The shock of this, I'll be honest. Um, so if you come on here and you come at me like, oh, you just want attention, please understand this is the most horrible thing I have ever had to do. This is just horrible. Ever since Justin was born, I've been his biggest fan, and for me to have to do something like this is just the most horrible thing in the world. Second, I need to apologize. I have this lovely ability to affect all things electrical, which means Zoom, computers, and what have you. So there's more than one way to get things done. So we're going to start with his Ask Me Anything video. Put that over there so you can see. Sorry about that. Would rather be sharing my screen. And we're going to start at the 13 mark.
Walla, can you go more in detail about when you were working a part-time job while getting your business off the ground?
Ooh. Yeah, so the first time I did it was when I got that first job. After I went to that hospital so many times, I was making enough money that I could auto draft about 80% of my paycheck into another bank account because you had to have a net worth of $10,000, which I did not have. So I just kept learning. I did my best actually because I was in the industry I'd end up working in. I did my best actually to pick up on systems because I knew I wanted to start my own business. It made me hyper focus on the things that they were doing from a different lens of instead of me just wanting to get it done to get my job done and go home. It made me look at it as to why it made a better business or like what about this QC system um, is making the business more money. And then there was a lot of things I noticed that I was able to take with me, systems wise or spreadsheet wise or form wise or whatever. So there was that.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there because his timeline is all wrong. I was able to go through my computer, my old one, and I found his resume from after he graduated. And I can put this so you can see my screen. And it goes in there. See, Justin Waller, that's actually my address. When he had a Yahoo, how he had graduated and everything. But he was at Austin Bridge and Road in Bastrop, and he worked there until 2011. And here's something else I'd like to show you. I found every single one of my AOL documents, and it shows in 2011, after he had quit that job, is when he came and went to work for a Cajun construction company. And it was at that job he was bidding out and also working at the steakhouse. So his timeline is off on that.
I actually started the business right after that project, and I had some things go wrong on a job. I lost about $30,000. Today, it would be like me losing a substantial amount of money, enough to make me have to get a job. So what I did is I'd wake up super, super early, 3, 4 o'clock. I'd go work out, and then I'd go estimate jobs before work started, before anybody would come to the office. So I was able to win enough work that I knew that I could quit my job and have a year's worth of work based off of the numbers that I projected in the estimates. So I'd say I had won about $500,000 or $600,000 worth of work. Me being a one-man show at a 35% margin, I knew I could quit, and that's what I did, and that was 12 years ago. So
did you ever have like a mentor or somebody educate you in the way, like what you were getting into when you're doing business, or you just were flying by the seat of your pants?
when I got into the business, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I often say that if I had.
Wait a minute. When he was getting into the construction business, he didn't know what he was getting into. How many videos and how many times have you heard him say that he grew up in the metal building construction company? He knew exactly what he was getting into. This was a family affair.
Had to choose again. I think a lot of success is based off of business model. Mm-hmm. So I think you can have two entrepreneurs and you can have one in business model A. Let's say it's like a reoccurring online business, or you have the second guy in B. They could be the same level entrepreneur, but the guy that picks the better business model will will absolutely look like a genius compared to the other guy. And I think if I'd have picked something other than construction, I would substantially be worth more money. But that's through the rear view lens, bro.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what you wanted to do at the time.
well, it's all I knew to do. So it was really, for me, it was
See?
about consciousness.
Now, just exactly 1 minute ago, he said he didn't know what he was getting into, and then he turns around and says it's all he knows. So which is it?
I knew that, I always say, it's like the only way we knew how to make doctor money was in boots, right? It's all I knew. My stepdad put up metal buildings in backyards, and I knew that he made good money doing that. So in my mind, I thought, well, I could.
Now hold up. Doctor money and work boots. I know my stepdad made good money. Okay, so we're going to clarify some things about stepdad. He actually worked for a major construction company in South Louisiana. He was a supervisor, and he had a crew, and they built huge buildings. But because we were always being sued, and because Justin actually played baseball up until his senior year, and that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And so he would do an extra building here and there and make sure that we had the extra things that we needed. And this company, they gave out bonuses based on what you did. And that particular year, a lot of those guys did a lot of stuff, and we were estimated to get close to $20,000. We found out Christmas Eve that they were not giving out Christmas bonuses, and we had already bought Christmas and, you know, done all of that. And so that was a huge, huge shock. So stepdad went out on his own. And Justin talks about, you know, metal buildings in the backyard. These are huge manufacturing buildings. You know, a welder would get something like this, or a mechanic or some kind of manufacturer would set these up. But he also did strip malls. Now, when he ended up going to work for Justin, he was at a stage in his life where he was wanting to slow down. He wanted to keep a roof over his head, and he wanted to go hunting and fishing on the weekends. Simple man. Simple South Louisiana man.
Can go build big buildings and like for big companies and do really well. It just took me a decade, you know, and I got fucked up a lot, you know, on the way. Yeah. And I think it made me a better man. I often question, like, why the fuck did I pick this? But I think it gave me a lot. I developed a lot through it. And so I've been able, I think I'll be able.
And I'll tell you why. It was an easy A. And he knew a lot about it. That's exactly why.
To accelerate faster now because of it.
Is that what educated you, like, about money? Because whenever I talk to Robert Kiyosaki, he's always talking about, like, his rich dad and his poor dad, right? And he was always wondering about, like, going to school, and he's, like, wanting to know, like, the class to learn about money. And it's like nothing was forthcoming. And so I think that's something that you kind of have to learn from the real world. I mean, we're getting an education in crypto these days. We're getting an education in economics. You know, where I learned money from is actually like well, certainly from the crypto side of things. You know, you guys, but like George Gammon, McElroy, the rest of these guys. It's like I have a whole I had a fundamentally different idea about money. Just, you know, when I started to do this full time, but now I've got a different opinion of it because I listen to George Gammon. I hear about macroeconomics, but I'm like, where do you get an education like that? And do you think it's basically sort of just living in the real world and like learn as you go along?
Yeah, for me, I'll never forget the first day I was gonna learn crypto. I bought my buddy.
All right, this just is kind of a little bit more of Justin worship. Let's skip ahead to 42.
What's the best way to start a mentoring business?
Have experiences, man. I wanted to do YouTube for a long time, but I wouldn't let myself do it until I was a liquid millionaire, like $1 million in the bank. And I honestly think we're in this weird time in history where they're letting assholes go out and literally talk shit about shit they haven't done.
Really? Let any asshole talk shit about shit they haven't done. He can't keep his story straight for less than a minute. And he's out there trashing his family. And he's going to say something like that?
And they end up becoming millionaires from that. And I think that's... It's bullshit, but there's nothing you can really do about it.
I'm doing something about it. He is lying to you.
So one thing I would tell you, man, is that if you're ever gonna start mentoring somebody, you want to be a life coach or anything, just make sure that you've actually done it. And I don't mean read about it. I mean been through it, experienced it. Um, because what I have found is after doing that for myself, it was a lot easier, I think, for all you guys to accept me. And so
there it is. He had to have a bad story for those men to accept him. So he's trashing his family and trashing his town and trashing, just hurting us all, to be accepted by those men and to get your money and for you to be impressed by him.
So I was let into this space and grew a lot faster because of that. I think some kind of mutual respect.
We knew you were legit from the get-go.
Yeah, and it super means a lot to me, and I'm really proud that I waited for that reason. So the only advice I could really give is to make sure that you've actually gone through that experience fully yourself, like on the ground in the trenches, dealing with the intricate little bitty things that actually happen when you actually do it. So I would.
If you're gonna go to a drug counselor, like say you're gonna like.
I'm gonna stop it right there. He just basically said, don't do as I do as I say, don't do as, it. So I wanted to show you something. And he talks about, I'm going to share my screen, let me over. You see that? This is hysterical. So there's my AOL mail. And we are going to search it for Mr. Justin. Here we go. Oh, my Lord. Look at all of this. So, I wanted to point out, okay, so this was all the stuff that we worked on as a family, helping Justin get started. There was, samples of LLC, his card order, just different crazy time sheets. So we were all, a major part of that. And this is so funny. You can look on here. It's talking about how Justin started working with his stepdad. This was on his original website for Red Iron. Phil Collins, General Superintendent and a head slave driver at Red Iron. And, the thing about that is Phil went in kind of a semi-retirement when right before Justin graduated. He had been injured at Salco, and, it was time to fish a little bit. The kids were growing up. And he gave up everything. He went back to work and got involved just to help Justin get started. And he trashes him on a regular basis. And that's just really shameful. That's just shameful. Now let's switch over here. Establish your ethics before they're needed. And we're going to go to the 5-minute mark.
For a year, I was able to become the starting tight end on the varsity football team. And there was a guy that really took me under his wing, that was really good to me, probably one of the best friends, and to this day, probably one of the best friends I've ever had. He helped me buy school uniforms. He would get me into bars way before my age, 17.
Okay. I have heard this story in different variations in different videos. This was originally maybe a friend from high school, and he'll talk about how bad his home life was and how he had to spend the night. I want y'all to think about the popular kid at school. He was always being invited to different places. And when you are athletic and charismatic and you want your child to hang out with that kind of child, so they can get a little farther, maybe, pick up some sport tips and different sort of things. And a lot of times Justin would spend the night with somebody like before a ball game, but he was really, really bad about wanting to spend the night with somebody when it was his turn to do the dishes or his turn to help with the house, because there were 5 children and everybody participated. And that's what he's talking about when he wants to get out of the house. It wasn't that our house was hell to live in. That's an absolute lie.
15, get me into bars, 16, get me in bars. He would, buy food for me. He'd take me places. We would go fishing together. He was a really positive and beneficial friend to have in my life. And in 2016, there was a big flood. And I'll never forget, he calls me and he says, listen, I need help. My family's house is flooded. My house is flooded. I've got trees down. I need manpower. And do you have a man lift? And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, it's like there's a lot of profit that I could go make with these guys. There's a lot of cost in this machine. But this guy's been there for me my entire life. And so I spent the money on the machine. I sent the manpower out there. I didn't make the profit off of those men. And you could look at that and say, well, you had the ability to do it, so you did it. But the truth of the matter is, if I had not put myself in a position financially to be able to show up when he really, really needed me, I would have missed the mark on the ethics before they had come.
I have to stop it right there. In 2017, my cancer had come back. I needed to have a mastectomy right then and there to stop it. And I went to Justin and I said, look, I need about $2,000 a month for about 6 months so I can have a mastectomy. And he said, Mama, I don't think you're my responsibility. I was absolutely crushed. I had to continue working. My cancer spread, it got worse. And it's the reason I am in the advanced stage that I am now. Now, I forgave Justin, stayed in contact with Justin. Had to let that go. But for him to go off on, look how good a guy I am, and he lets his mother, who has always been there for him, his biggest cheerleader, or let's just say I was a hell, I'm still his mom. And I just needed a little bit of help for a short period of time. But I wasn't his responsibility. And that's his ethic. So I want you to remember that. When he talks about being an ethical man and giving back, I want you to remember what he said to his mother with cancer. His mother that's now dying because of his decision. That's Justin Waller's ethics.